Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back, everyone. Glad to have you here today on our Total Wellness Tuesday episode of the Cabral Concept. Today is episode 2237. All show notes, all resources and studies will be over at stephencabral.com/2237. Can't wait to get into today's show. Today is all about moving beyond macros. I've done a couple shows like this in the past, but what I really wanted to do was hammer home today how important it is for the long run to not overestimate, right? So we don't want to overestimate how important it is to look at your macros and underestimate what we should be really truly looking at in terms of overall health, which is our micros. So just I'll give you a little intro on micros. I want to talk with macros first, but put it all together as to why I believe that most people are on the wrong path right now in terms of transforming their body while at the same time sacrificing their long-term health. I believe that you can do both. I believe that you can transform your body while at the same time achieving long-term health, wellness, anti-aging. And it is also my opinion, because I've seen this play out in clinical practice, that if you focus on your health, it's actually so much easier to transform your body because you're not always pushing against the tide. If you work with your body, if you rebalance your hormones, your gut function, etc., it's actually much easier to decrease systemic-based inflammation and influence your metabolism in a positive way. So let's go over that today. And the reason why this whole show was brought up is because there's a really smart guy that is going to remain nameless, and I've watched a couple of his videos now, and he talks about more from like a philosophical, life-based perspective, but definitely has a background in fitness. There's no doubt about it. And he's in great shape. He's probably in his early 30s. He works hard. There's no doubt about it. It's a combination of working hard, knowing what to do in terms of macros, and also good genetics, right? So it's like the three kind of interplay, because as we all know, two people could work out the same amount and they could eat the same thing and they can look radically different. So, to a degree, genetics matter. I say they're not your destiny, meaning that you might have to put in more work or you might have to put in less work based on your genetics, but you can get there. You won't look exactly like another individual. And I think that that's probably a good thing. I don't think we want everybody to look exactly the same, right? In my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. What this person was talking about, and that's why I had to push back a little bit. And again, I'm not going to speak negatively about anybody, very smart individual. They were basically just saying that you can essentially eat whatever you want if you figure out your resting metabolic rate or your basal metabolic rate, and then you look at your protein first. I talked about that on last podcast. That was episode 2232 last week. If you want to check out how to figure out your protein and then balance your body in terms of blood sugar and et cetera that way as well. But really, they were saying all you want to do is look at your protein requirement for the day, essentially take your body weight, multiply it by 1 in terms of pounds. That's how much your protein you're going to eat per day. And then you can eat whatever you want. You're going to keep your fat low, eat whatever you want in terms of your carbohydrates, only up until the point where you maintain your body weight. It's not the worst way to look at it. It's not, but this person was all saying that means you could eat ice cream, you could have dessert, you could eat, your favorite candy. That's literally what they were saying. And because they're able to maintain their weight and be in great shape, they speak as an authority because they're letting their results show through. Now, I totally get that. I totally understand, and I don't want to speak negatively. However, I can assure you that eating processed food, that eating all sorts of food dyes, and not really caring whether you're getting your micronutrients or not Does not matter in the short term. I get that, but it certainly matters in the long term. So this individual, if they continue on this path, although they may look like they're in shape from the exterior, their interior is going to be one moving towards far more inflammation. Right? There's no doubt about that. They do not care how they meet their protein requirements. They do not care how they meet their overall macros. So there's essentially a diet called if it fits your macros, right? So you could eat a candy bar if it fits your macros, right? Because you're just looking at your overall carbs, your fat, and your protein for the day. And believe it or not, doing that, you can lose weight. Again, not the healthiest way. There's lots of different ways to lose weight and get in shape. That is not necessarily the healthiest. And that's because your body is building up an inflammation. That inflammation is implicated in 90% of all disease. Now, again, it has a root cause. In this particular case, it's a poor diet. Some other cases, it might be gut dysfunction, although eating that much candy can certainly lead to gut dysfunction. Eating whatever you want in terms of processed flours and processed baked goods and ice cream and all that is going to be higher in inflammatory omega-6s, right? So if you have a higher inflammatory omega-6s, well, the ratio is going to be skewed in terms of omega-3s, which leads to higher likelihood of all-cause mortality. So a greater likelihood of your cardiovascular disease, right? Because you can be lean and still have cardiovascular disease. You can be lean and still have high blood pressure. You can be lean. It's not often, right? Not as often, but you can have blood sugar dysregularity, and certainly cancer is one of those as well. So when I see people, saying, look at me, look at my results, you should do this too. It's so much easier than you think. And then people go and follow it because they want those same results. I totally understand it. Again, I get it. The problem is you are literally going to be rusting and wearing out from the inside out. And that's not what I want for you. So if you follow a macro plan, I'm also okay with that. Let's just make it a healthy one, not if it fits your macros. And again, nobody has any idea who I'm talking about, so please don't assert that I'm speaking about an exact individual, right? Because you probably don't know the person. So I don't want us to think that we're talking negatively about any one particular individual, especially if they're famous for saying that this is their diet plan. There's a lot of people that talk about this. What I do want to share with you is that you can eat good, healthy protein, and it can be legumes, it could be dal, it could be mung beans, it could be chickpeas, it could be wild salmon, it could be sardines, it could be grass-fed beef, whatever you choose, okay? I'm just saying, choose a healthy source, proper level of omega-3s to omega-6s, probably not red meat every single day. I've done podcasts on this before. I don't want to get into debate on that today, but I'm just saying, again, if we're playing roulette, Let's be careful, right? Because we're betting on our life. That's all that I'm saying, right? We are betting on our life. And when we eat our carbohydrates, maybe let's stick to more brightly colored fruits and vegetables. If we're introducing more starch in our diet, okay, yams, yucca, purple potatoes, all of those are fantastic, right? So what I want to do now is go over why it's not just about macros. So I think too many people are focused on macros, and what happens is it makes their weight loss journey or weight gain journey, because the gain is just as important, right, for a lot of people, and their overall health that much more of a struggle, right? So if you're struggling with thyroid issues, adrenal issues, female hormone, male hormone issues, and you're trying to transform your body, and you're just focused on macros, without a doubt, you could get short-term results, but you're making it so much worse over the next 6 to 12 months. And I mean, a lot harder to recoup from because you're continuing to deplete your micros. So there's one more part before I get to micros, and it's this. A lot of people they have stomach digestive issues, okay? So they might be on Prilosec or Zantac or PPI, some type of acid blocker. And what happens is now they know they're not absorbing and breaking down their protein as well. So it's putrefying. And putrefying just means, a lot of people question, well, what is putrefying? It just means that it's improper protein breakdown. That's all. It's just literally rotting, and it takes longer to get through the stomach and gut. And that's that's fairly well proven, because you need a certain level of pH in your stomach acid in order to break down those proteins. It's very, very, again, standard. You also need a higher level of acid in order to properly metabolize zinc, calcium, magnesium, B12, and many others. So again, if you want to break down the protein chains, the amino acids, you want to be able to properly absorb a lot of these B vitamins and zinc and a lot of other things that we need for our immune system and bones, you need to have good digestion. So a lot of people don't. And so that's why their bodies are aging at a much faster rate, or they're gaining weight, or they're more inflamed, or they can't gain weight, etc. The other part of it is that medications. So a lot of people are on certain medications beyond PPIs that are slowing their metabolism, or they're causing poor gut absorption. Antibiotics, of course, is one of them, but it's certainly not the only one. If you look at a lot of thyroid-based medications or even some statins, some of them may contain chlorine molecules inside the medication, fluoride, etc. Certainly not a very good thing for our nervous system, our gut, and digestive lining. Few more, if you are smoking, even vaping, that counts as well. That can really disturb the overall metabolic processes in the body and certainly deplete your micronutrients and antioxidant capacity to a far greater level. I think all of these are often overlooked, but really important. A few more that I just want to talk about, that is parasites. I don't think we talk about parasites enough on the podcast. I will try to do a couple more shows on it. I've certainly talked about parasites before. You can search my parasite shows at stephencabral.com/podcasts and just type in parasite inside the search box. You can type in any keyword you want right there. There's over 2,000 shows. You will find information on that. So if you have parasites or even H. pylori, which can affect the stomach acid, what happens is you're not going to properly break down, digest a lot of those foods. You're going to be in a constant state of inflammation in your stomach and in your digestive system. So really important that we do take a look at those and begin to address the gut, SIBO, candida overgrowth. It's why it's my highest recommendation to run something like the starter kit, right? So the starter kit, it's not going to look at parasites, but it's less expensive. So you get to look at yeast and bacteria and all your vitamin levels and your mitochondrial levels, neurotransmitter metabolites, methylation, so much more. And that also comes with looking at your mineral levels, right? And these are your micronutrients that I'm talking about. Again, we'll get to that in just 1 minute. If you want to look for parasites and H. pylori, as well as bacterial overgrowth, well, then a bacterial and parasite stool test is certainly going to be best. That's a 3-day sampling of stool that you then mail in, and you get to look in depth at what's going on in your digestive tract. I just know that most people don't start there. They're not really willing to do a stool test. I totally get it. I understand. The starter kit is a great place to start. You get 2 labs for basically the same price as the bacteria and parasite stool test. So that's always an option. You can work with your local naturopathic doctor if they specialize in gut function. You can work with a level 2 integrative health practitioner. We now have on the website at the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute, you can actually search by specialty. So that's really nice. If you go to ihp.coach/practitioners, you'll be able to search that. And of course, you can work with my team as well. And that's just at stephencabral.com/ well, if you just go /labs, you'll see all the different labs. You could certainly go there as well. But let's get into micronutrients. So micronutrients are the opposite, not the opposite. They work in conjunction. Basically, the two go hand in hand. You have your macros. Those are proteins, fats, and carbs. I probably should have stated that in the beginning of the show, so I apologize. I always hope that people are kind of following us along the journey, right? And not everybody, of course, has been here for 2,000 shows. And I want you to be able to hop in on any of these podcasts and feel like, you totally understand what's going on. But macros are the 3 main macros. Some people state a fourth, but we're not going over that today. I don't think that that's even relative. There's fat, there's protein, and there's carbs, right? You can eat healthy fat, or you can eat oxidized, terrible fat, right? You can eat healthy carbs or non-healthy carbs, healthy protein or non-healthy protein, but there's 3 macros. Okay. Your micros, much more in depth. Think about all your B vitamins, right? B1, B2, B3, B4. You look at all your different B vitamins. So we have all those B vitamins. We have vitamin C. We have we have fat soluble vitamins, A, E, D, K, right? And so all these nutrients, those are micros, your vitamins, and then you have your minerals as well. Well, what are your minerals? Well, you've got your electrolytes. So you've got calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. You've got copper and zinc, and you've got phosphorus. You literally go down all of the minerals in your body, even things like iodine, selenium, chromium, etc. Then we also have other micros, which a lot of people don't consider like EPA and DHA more of a micro. They consider it kind of part of a macro, which is your fat, or because they come from fats. But in my opinion, we could go down a wild rabbit hole if we did that. So we're going to put any of the extracts from foods, like the nutrients in those foods, as micronutrients, right? So if it's not a fat, it's not a protein, it's not a carb, it's one of these vitamins and minerals that you can simply test for, or you can get through your nutrition. The problem is, we stated before, a lot of people are not getting them through their nutrition. And it's over 90% of the people in our practice are not getting their micronutrients from their nutrition. We test tens of thousands of people every single year. And I'm talking well over tens of thousands of people. It's probably like 30 to 50,000 people minimum a year on their lab tests. And we just see even people eating healthy diets are deficient in omega-3s. They're deficient in a lot of times magnesium, a lot of times zinc or copper. If they're taking zinc, they might not be getting copper, and so they're deficient in copper. So I'm doing a lot more case studies on this, but just suffice to say, most people aren't getting it from their nutrition alone, and sometimes not even from nutritional supplements if they're not taking a good all-in-one or like something like the daily nutritional support powder or a daily foundation protocol. They're just not getting their nutrients. And it's not surprising because I wrote about this in the rain barrel effect that really since the 1960s, we've had depleted soil. So the soil is, it is somewhere between 30% and 80% less of the micronutrients in the soil than it did 60 years previous, right? So if we look at today's soil, go back 60 plus years, and the soil was much more rich. Now, you can look at that. Why was the soil more rich? Okay. They fertilized the soil with manure. They also used oftentimes like a 3-field system. So they let the field actually begin the soil. When I'd say the soil begin to enrich, and they would move the field each time. They had these, if you've, I can't remember the movie or the documentary anymore, but essentially, they have a system where the cows will graze, the chickens come in, et cetera, et cetera. And again, it just fertilizes the land. Well, we don't do that anymore. And when we enrich the soil, what it means is we add in things like nitrogen, phosphorus, a couple things that are simply going to be fertilizers to get the food to grow. But that doesn't mean the nutrients are there. And then what we do is we just wipe out any type of a lot of the good bacteria on the soil with herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, et cetera. So now the bacteria is in the soil. We need that bacteria to uptake the nutrients into the plants themselves, into the food. So what we're left with is, yes, the same macros, right? Each plant has still the same carbs, same fat, same protein of whatever makeup it would have in that particular food. Now, but the problem is it lacks the micronutrients, it lacks the vitamins and minerals. Now, here's where it gets really tricky though. Your body runs with energy on carbs, protein, and fat, but your nervous system, your cells, they're going to run on the micronutrients. So sure, your body's going to break down those macros, and then those are going to be released into your blood. Okay, these are called now extracellular micronutrients. And the extracellular micronutrients are what you typically test at your doctor's office a lot of the time for your nutrient levels. Okay, so it looks at your calcium, magnesium, all those things. But that doesn't mean that those extracellular nutrients actually make their way into the intracellular, into your actual cells. Intracellular micronutrients are going to be how we get oxygen and utilize carbs, meaning like for the mitochondria, as well as oxygen with items such as calcium, magnesium, B12, folate, vitamin C, copper, right? So that is what we need in order to make oxygen inside of those cells. So when a lot of people look at anemia, they say, oh, well, the person's low in iron. That's not necessarily true. I mean, that's probably true maybe half the time. But then there can be low copper, low B12, low vitamin C, low B vitamins in general. And magnesium, I would say, add that to that as well. And then you might say, well, I'm really deficient in my bones are breaking down to a greater degree, you might say. Okay, well, what is it? Oh, we just need calcium. Well, no, you don't just need calcium. You actually need vitamin D, some vitamin K, and other nutrients in order to build up your bones, right? You need calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin K, and other nutrients, right? So that's what conventional medicine doesn't understand is that not everything is at face value. You need to peel back the onion. Conventional medicine never peels back the onion. They stop asking why. Well, actually, they never ask why. So essentially, when you get your blood work, if you have high cholesterol, they don't ask why, they give you a statin. If you have high blood pressure, they don't ask why, they give you a diuretic, beta blocker, calcium channel blocker. If you have an autoimmune disease, well, what are they prescribing? Well, they're prescribing some type of biological drug. Biological drug makes it sound like it's actually maybe healthy for you. What they're doing is they're giving you an immunosuppressant, right? They're shutting down a part of your immune system. You might say, well, that sounds terrible. Well, it is. I mean, it is terrible. It's the possibility then of ending up in the hospital with pneumonia or some other issue goes up dramatically. And I'm not telling you to get off your medication, but what I'm saying is ask why. Why do I have the high cholesterol? Why do I have the high blood pressure? And if your doctor says, well, it's genetics, then you just say, okay, get it. But here's the issue. Why didn't I have it then 5 years ago? They say, well, it goes off at a specific time. Well, that's not true at all. It goes off when it's the expression of those genes from a single nucleotide polymorphism, typically multiple of them, it decides for the expression of that based on the environment that it's in. It's called the terrain, right? The interstitial milieu. It's what your cells swim in. It's what your body bathes in. And you need to make sure that that bathing area is clean, right? There can be filled with bacteria, heavy metals, etc. And you could be deficient in many of these vitamins, which set off the genetics, right? Many people have heard of MTHFR before. Maybe they heard of COMT. Maybe they've heard of DAO. Maybe they've heard of the cytochrome P450 pathway. Like all these things, it's becoming more prevalent in being talked about on podcasts like this, which is great. So you start to listen, okay, like all of this makes sense to a degree, but really at the end of the day, it's all set off by a lack of micronutrients. That's the truth, right? It's set off by a lack of micronutrients and sometimes in ratio. So people are then saying, well, I need to take 3 grams of methylfolate a day. No, you don't, because you could end up, and most likely will, end up over methylating, right? So these mega doses of vitamins are typically never the way either, right? We're not looking at that. When we're talking about B vitamins, most of your B vitamins are like, 50 to 100 milligrams per day. Things like, excuse me, things like folate are actually in micrograms. So you're taking 400, 800. If you're pregnant, maybe 1,000 micrograms per day. If you're someone that needs to help out with MTHFR, maybe, again, you're taking like 800 to 1,000 micrograms per day. Maybe, right? So that's what we have to look at. But these micronutrients are what gives your body energy. It's what helps to balance your overall genetics. It's what helps to keep your nervous system calm, right? That is literally how the body works. The body only works from an energy reserve on macros. It can store extra energy in terms of glycogen in your liver or muscles, or as body fat, adipose tissue. It can swell, it can become larger, it can basically store more calories there. But if we're talking about micronutrients, well, those can only be stored to a certain degree. They're going to be stored inside the cells. Again, to a various degree. Now, after that, what happens is they can become depleted over time. And the reason why I bring up the micronutrient storage is because your body can only store so much, which is why you need to get them on a daily basis. So we see a lot of people doing 1 meal a day. Well, think about that. If you do 1 meal a day, you need to get all of your macros in 1 meal. You need to, or even a certain time period. You need to get all your macros in that 1 meal. But then we overlook, you need to get all your micros in 1 meal, which is nearly impossible. So if you're looking at 7 and 9 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, if you want to be a healthy individual, because again, it's really the only anti-cancer, anti-all-cause mortality diet out there. Again, feel free to add whatever protein you want to that. Feel free to add whatever healthy fat you want. I'm just talking about getting your antioxidant-filled nutrients, right? Antioxidants are also a micronutrient to a degree. The antioxidants are what helps squelch free radical damage, help to balance inflammation in the body, and so much more. So, I mean, everything from your eyes deteriorating to you getting younger, more youthful-looking skin, that's happening with antioxidants, as well as, again, nutrients like zinc, calcium, magnesium, what else? Vitamin C for your skin. Really, really important. So what I'm saying is this. I think we've taken it too far in terms of maybe oversimplification of diet. If it fits your macros and then 1 meal a day, just kind of shove as much food as you want into your body. And if it transforms your body, then you're doing well. Again, I think we have to be careful with that because by the time 12 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours rolls around, well, your body's been using energy all day long. And you might say, well, I'm tapping into my fat stores now. Okay, that's fine. But what about all the micronutrients? Because your fat stores aren't storing all of those micronutrients. Those are what you get from food on a daily basis. Your body's making and manufacturing very little of your own vitamins and minerals and antioxidants on a daily basis. Yes, it's manufacturing things like glutathione, et cetera. But again, you're taxing the body, right? You're asking it to use more of its vital reserves. So what I say to you is this: use fasting strategically. Use it on a 12-hour to 16-hour overnight basis, or overnight basis for 12 to 16 hours. Ideally, not skipping breakfast. You might be delaying breakfast a couple hours, but what you're really trying to do is move your hours before bed that you're not eating further and further down, because that's where the most benefit comes from. So the most benefit for sure comes from deeper sleep, REM, improved heart rate variability, lower body temperature, and that happens from stopping eating 3-4 hours before bed. And I've talked about before, I'll give some more tips on a different show about how to shorten that window if you need to. There's a couple hacks that you can use. But that's the way to be, because when you wake up in the morning, your metabolism's revving. When you go to bed, it's not. So the cortisol awakening response, as well as your thyroid response, naturally starts to begin to happen at 3 a.m. in the morning. And then that's 3 to 4 or so for thyroid, and then 6 to 8 a.m. or so for cortisol. And so your metabolism is boosted then. Testosterone is boosted then. Your body's saying, okay, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's using a lot of fuel, whether you like it or not. That's the way that the human body works. Then before bed, you're using less fuel. So if you're packing in all those nutrients at night, sure, you can still transform your body that way, but it's not how the human body is necessarily meant to then begin to go into a repair phase overnight. So again, 12 to 16 hours overnight fast, more hours before you go to bed, the better. And then yes, you can still strategically do a 24-hour, 1 day a week fast. You can still strategically do 2, 3+ days every quarter. The body's okay with that because you're specifically and strategically tapping in then to deeper reserves to get into autophagy, and so much more. We'll talk about other forms of autophagy in the future. So again, I bring this up because I just want to caution, I know a lot of health practitioners listen to this as well, but I want to caution everybody to just be careful. I do like simplification, but not oversimplification where you think like, well, I can transform my body and eat anything I want. If it sounds too good to be true, it's almost always not true, right? So let's just keep that in mind. I'll do a follow-up on this for sure. Just let me know what your questions are, what your comments are. Feel free to leave them right below this post or this video on YouTube or any post on Instagram as well related to this. Take care, everyone. Again, hopefully this was helpful. Let me know your questions and comments. I'll do a follow-up. And feel free to share this show with anyone you believe it could serve. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Steven Cabral. And that's Steven with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.